Before I introduce you to the presenter, I will begin today with some background on the Institute. The Sikh Research Institute's mission is to provide educational resources to Sikhs to lead a Guru-inspired life. As a global nonprofit organization, we produce original online courses, research papers, videos, podcasts, events, and books to create the largest go-to source of Sikh knowledge online. Today's class is a part of the live series Anand Sahib, Way to Bliss. Anand Sahib holds a very special place in Sikh tradition, as it is sung in almost every congregational setup. Revealed to Guru Amardas Sahib, the bani essentially details the human quest for bliss and the lifestyle that is necessary for leading a blissful life. The beauty and significance of Anand Sahib can be gauged from the fact that it dwells on a variety of ideas and principles that are central to Sikh thought. This class will begin with a 40-minute lecture, followed by 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. So please, again, drop your questions in the chat box and be sure to include your name and city. Our instructor today is Surinder Pal Singh, a researcher in Sikh studies. He works at the Sikh Research Institute, where he develops curriculum, presentations, and research papers on Sikh history and culture. He is a lead instructor of Gurbani 101 track at Civic, an annual leadership program by Sikri. He's the co-author of Gurbani Linguistics book, Guru Granth Sahib, Its Language and Grammar. He has over 10 years of experience in teaching Gurbani linguistics and 20 years of experience in teaching Sikh theology and culture. He received his Master's of Arts in English and Religious Studies. Please welcome Surinder Pal.
Thank you, Maninder. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the second live session of Anand Sahib course. But before we start, I would like to share a few thoughts on a couple of items. Last week, we noticed a few questions regarding my pronunciation and a few questions on grammar. Well, on the issue of pronunciation, I would like to clarify that, as mentioned last week, Gurmukhi is a highly phonetic script, so we are supposed to read it as it is written. Additionally, the vowel endings on words have a grammatical role to play, so we cannot, omit or ignore those as well. But having said that, I want to acknowledge that my pronunciation is not uniform or firm, because I mostly read and listen to the predominant style of Gurbani pronunciation. And when my focus is not specially pronunciation, I tend to waver between what I want to, how I want to read, and how I end up reading. So since it's a learning process, that difference is going to be there always. So the point is that please do not get stuck with my pronunciation, because this is not a Sankhya class per se. And if someone gets fixated to my pronunciation, then it defeats the purpose of the session. The other thing I wanted to mention was the grammar. There were a few questions regarding grammar as well, and again, this is to inform that it is not a linguistics course per se, and the focus is the interpretation of the bani. Though grammar is used in deriving meanings, but then if we start doing that, many people will not be able to relate to it, because you have to have a grounding in it. You have to have an understanding of the case declensions and other related things to fully appreciate the grammatical nuances. So consequently, we will not be taking up questions related to pronunciation and grammar in general. So with that, we'll start the presentation. But before we discuss today's body, let's have a relook at what we covered last week. In body 1, we learned briefly in Anand Paya Meri Mai Satguru Mein Paya Wali body that bliss can only be attained by developing a relationship with the Sabad Guru, and by submitting to the Guru and enshrining the Sabad in our heart. Two, that the Guru can only be found in equipoise of a disciplined life, practiced consistently out of love and not through a few token acts of forced, compulsion or, pretense. There has to be a genuine connection and effort inspired by love for that, bliss to occur, for that connection, that relationship to develop. In 42, we learned that we need to stop, worrying about our affairs and connect with the divine, the one who is basically capable of doing everything. Our job is to stay in awareness of the divine existence. It will also give us a sense of discernment between what's right and what's wrong to do. As far as the affairs are concerned, they will be taken care of once we have naturally and intuitively acted upon the Guru's wisdom and stayed connected with the divine. One important thing that came up in this body, which was also discussed in Q&A, was regarding the difference between, you know, uh, knowledge and awareness, and it directly links to the first line of the second body actually. "E man meria, tu sada raho harnale." Oh my mind, always stay with the Hari, the reliever. And the answer is, always living in awareness of the all around presence of Ekankar, seeing Ekankar in everyone and everything. Now, this idea could simply be a part of knowledge, but when our every decision is informed by and guided by this awareness of Ekankar's presence around us, that is when that knowledge becomes our awareness. So those are the two major ideas discussed in the second body. So that's a brief relook at the two bodies we covered last week. We then move on to body 3. Let's start with it. It says, you know, Sache Sahiba, kya nahi karte hai. Now the third body also picks the lead from, the second one, and then there is a continuation of ideas flowing in a sequence from urging to constantly, stay in the presence of the divine in order to, take care of our affairs. Third body gives the reasons, like a dangling carrot, informing us that the house of the master, the house of the master is the provider of everything. So you got to do it. This is why you have to, always stay in the presence of the master. It says, Sache Saiba, O true master, kya nahi karte hai? What is not in your house? It is a rhetorical question, and the answer to it is, well, there is nothing that is not in your house. And the implication is that Kalpurk is the provider of everything. And it says, Karta tera sab kich hai. The second line explicitly answers that rhetorical question posed in the first line and says, and it basically removes all the doubts if you have any. It says, the reality is, Karta tera, in your house, sab kich hai, there is everything, but only that individual gets su power a, whom you grant, this day, whom you give. So now, if you remember, we talked about this point last week that usually when such lines appear in Gurbani, like the one in the previous body, which said that, all affairs of a devotee are endorsed, people usually start wondering, really? All sorts of affairs? But we fail to, take into account qualifiers given to such statements at many places. For example, the next line clarifies and says that the most valuable grant that one can, have is Naam. It says Sada Sifat, praise always. Sada Sifat Salah Teri, Naam Manav Save. Sada Sifat, praise always. Salah Teri, your praise. There is an emphasis on praise. The second time a different word is used, but the idea is of praise. Naam Manav Save. Thus, Naam, that only the Guru can give comes to reside in an individual's mind. And this is how everything is achieved. If we look at it from Gurbani's perspective, the Naam comes to reside within, then all hungers for material things dies, and there's actually no wish left for an individual other than the divine love. So there is a delicate and implicit suggestion which we should always be mindful of. Now, before we move forward, it is important that we discuss a word Naam briefly. So in Guru Granth Sahib, term Naam is vast. Naam is a key term and central principle of Sikhi around which the entire Sikh worldview revolves as well as evolves. So literally, Naam can be traced uh, to Old Punjabi and Prakrit as well as Farsi and Sanskrit. Uh, in all of them, its form is pretty similar, except in Sanskrit where it's Naman, and its meaning is commonly understood, and it's pretty simple. It is used in this name of it's used for the name of things, and then as nouns, and then for fame, honor, reputation in general. Like you might have heard in Punjabi someone saying, "Oda bada naam hai." In English, you will hear people say he has a big name, in the field of education or something like that. And it's also used to show qualities, nature, and attributes of things. But in the Sikh tradition, it requires a new dimension. Often, naam is considered merely a word which is to be repeated or recited, though literally a name or an identifier, but Naam alludes to something more than that, much more vast than a mere name of Allah. So numerous names of or words of Waheguru, such as Ram, Rahim, Hari, Govind, also appear. But Naam is also sometimes used as a substitute for them. So Naam in itself is a synonym for Akal Purkh in the Bani. But when we see it in the totality of Guru Granth Sahib, in addition to being a synonym, a name for the Supreme Being, Naam also represents the active, creative facet of the Akal Purkh that is constantly, creating, preserving, governing, sustaining everything in the entire creation. In this way, Naam is also the law, the ultimate principle that's governing the entire phenomenal world around us. And it's the sum total of all the qualities of Akal Purkh. So I'll show you a few examples of Naam where it doesn't appear as name per se, but something which is actively working, something active, a force that is governing everything, the active facet of the Akal Purkh. It says Naam ke tare sagle jant, Naam ke tare khand brahmand, Naam ke tare simrit ved puran, Naam ke tare सुनन ज्ञान ध्यान नाम के तारे आगास पाताल नाम के तारे सगल आकार नाम के तारे पुरिया sub pavan. The idea that supported and established by Naam are sagale jant, all beings, khand brahmand, cosmos and universes, simriti ved puran, you know smritis, the Vedas and the Puranas, the basically the Sanatan, the texts of the Sanatan tradition. Sunan Gyantan, the hearing and contemplation of all wisdom. Agas Patal, skies and the nether regions, and all the Purya and Pavan, the regions and the realms. All of these things are being actively established as well as supported by Naam. So how Naam is envisioned as an active force that's taking care of and governing everything that's in this phenomenal world. Here it says, Jeta Kita, Teta Now. Whatever you see around, everything that's created is Naam. There is no place or there is no thing other than Naam. So anything that you see around yourself, all the phenomenal world, this is nothing but Naam. So when you start looking at Naam from that perspective, the Naam becomes something really big and vast, more than just a word. So something to think about when we, discuss Naam and Bani. All right, we move back to the body. We were on the third line. Sada sifat salah teri naam man wasabe. Always praise, and that's how you, enshrine naam. And then you move on to the third line. Naam jinka man vasya, vaje sab knere. Those in whom naam comes to reside, divine realization dawns. They are always engrossed in the sabad. Vaje means play, and kanere means a lot, implying that naam resound, sabad resounds all the time in a devotee's mind. Now there are different ways to look at the line here. Most scholars interpret the later part of the line as musical instruments playing in the heart, which suggests that there is a constant celebration in the mind once Naam comes to reside within. And the other could be an allusion to the state of Anhadnad, which comes from the yogic tradition. Basically, there are seven major energy nodes, in the human body as per the yogic tradition. And when, life force, Kundalini, as per yoga, is awakened, it moves upwards. It's elevated from the lowermost node or chakra. It's called chakra. And it's the lowermost is the Mooladhara. From there, it moves upwards and it passes, goes through, different nodes, chakras, and it moves upwards. So when it reaches the fourth node chakra, it is called Anahat, uh, which is around the heart, near the heart, then the individual who is going through that experiences anahatnad, unstruck sound that plays without even striking. So the yogic tradition believes that that's the sign of the movement of a person towards a realized being. So it could be possibly be an allusion to that as well. So finally, it says, coming back to the last line, naam jinka man vasya vaje sab nere, in whose heart or mind naam has come to reside, then that state is realized. That state is realized, or all musical instruments play. The idea is that the mind is always joyous. Then there's an emphasis. Finally, the first line is repeated at the end. It says, Kaha Nanak Sache Sahib. Nanak says, Sache Sahib, O eternal master, true master, kya nahi karte rahe? What is there that is not available in your house? Basically, you have everything. You possess everything, including material wealth, since Naam is the creator of everything, as well as the spiritual bliss that many people are looking for. So, what is the lesson in this body? So, the body talks about two major things. One is the idea of divine being the provider of all, and second, that the connection with Naam, love of Naam brings everything to an individual. It's a different story that once you have developed that love for Ekonkar, Naam, everything else becomes secondary, immaterial for you. That love itself becomes your focus, your passion, your devotion. Uh, Next, we move on to body 4. The fourth body, there is a pointer to the just like the previous bodies, and we discussed Naam in the previous body. So this one takes that idea forward further and elaborates on Naam as well. Sacha Naam Mera Adhar. It says, Sacha Naam Mera Adharu, the true Naam, the eternal Naam is my support. Sach Naam Adhar Mera. The eternal Naam, then there's an emphasis by repetition. The eternal Naam is my support. Jini Pukha Sab Gawaiyan, which has eliminated all my hungers by virtue of making Naam my support. All my hungers have been eliminated. Gawaiyan, Gawadatiyan, lost. So here we go. We have discussed this point of a couple of times that once we are truly in love of Naam, then all other desires, they die. That's what exactly this line is saying. Sach naam adhar mera jin bhukha sab goiyan. So when Gurbani says that all affairs are taken care of, we need to keep things in perspective and remember that this instruction that lest we sometimes go wild with our imagination. So we need to keep this thing in mind. Sant sukh mani ayvasya. Next line says, Jin ichha sab pujaiyan. Karisant. Naam has brought, peace within. Sant. Sukh man ay. And by virtue of that, what has happened? Sukh man ayvasya. Sukh, happiness, ayvasya has come to reside where? Money, in the mind. Jin, in whose mind? Jin, which ichha sab pujaiyan, which has led to all the desires being filled in the heart of that person who has enshrined Naam within. That person's desires have been eliminated. It really reminds me of a lot of Sikhs in history who have actually displayed that this idea. When we think of how can Guru be the source of Anand, then we think of these Sikhs. For instance, by Matidas, when he was to be martyred, his only wish was that his face should be towards Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib, and he was actually reciting Japji Sahib when he was sought into two. That's what the Sikh tradition tells us. So that's when you realize what could be the true Anand that people experience. Because when we are acting, we cannot really go through. When we are pretending, we can't really go through such hardships in life. Such extreme things. Only a person who is truly in love of Akal Purkh, Eka Onkar, who has actually enshrined Shabad, Guru's Shabad in the heart, can actually say, you know what, my Guru should be my face should be towards the Guru when I when I breathe my last. So that's the real example of Sahaj that appeared in the first body. Anand Pya Meri Mae, Satguru mein paya, Satgur ta paya, Sahaj seti. Sadgur can only be found or met in Sahaj when there is no pretense or any sort of blemish in the heart. When we actually enshrine Naam in our heart, that's when Shabad in our heart, that's when we have truly met the Guru in proper Sahaj. And these are the examples in our history that shows how people have actually experienced that bliss. Okay, next. Third line, Sada Kurban Kita Guru Vittahu, ਜਿਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਇਹ ਵਡਿਆਈਆਂ. Sada Kurban Kita. I am always a sacrifice. Now, this is a literal, meaning uh, of the word, but the idea is that I really adore my Guru. The idea is that I am willing to, give up myself. I can go to any length to basically please my Guru. I've already submitted to the Guru and I'll do anything and everything that my Guru asks me. So that's the idea in this Kurban. Sada Kurban Kita Guru Vitto. I'm always a sacrifice. I always adore my Guru. Jistiyan eh vadiyaiyan. Who is the source of all the above greatnesses that we discussed? That people like Paimati Das Ji, Satish Das Ji, or all the martyrs in the history have displayed, which has resulted in a state of peace, tranquility, and all hungers and desires being, eliminated. This line again leads to the examples of Gursikh, which I just mentioned. Kaha Nanak suno santo sabdi karo pyar. Kaha Nanak suno santo. Nanak says, proclaims, O saints, listen, this is the real deal. Sabad taro pyar. Develop a love of the sabad, because it brings peace and douses the fire of other love, my desire for otherworldly things, and it helps me enshrine, Naam, which is like the support of my life. Acha, Naam Mera. Again, that idea which the body started with has been repeated here. That true Naam is the support of my life. So, what is the lesson in this pauri? The lesson is that we need to develop a love of Naam, which is the support of everything. By virtue of that, all hopes, expectations, thirsts, and hunger for things will die, and as a result, my anxieties will go away, and I will stop running around for things. This will take away my pains and suffering as well. Second thing is, the question rises then, how do I basically enshrine Naam within? And the answer to that is by developing a loving relationship with the Sabad Guru. Sabad Taro Pyaro, the line said at the end. All right, with that, we will move to the fifth pauri. Pauri 4 talked about the good things that happen to an individual who is connected with Naam. This pauri picks up from there and continues to describe the results of making Naam the support of one's life. It says what happens when you have actually connected with Naam. It says Vaje Panch Sabad Tit Kar Sapage. Kar Sapage Sabad Vaje Kala Jit Kartari. It says Vaje Panch Sabad. 5 sabads play. Titkar Sapage. Sapage is fortunate. Titkar, that house, that fortunate house. In that fortunate house, Vaje Panch Sabad. 5 sabads play. Kar Sapage. In that fortunate house, Sabad Vaje, sabads play. Kala Jit Kartariya. In which house or in which body your consciousness, power, kala has come to reside, or in whom you have placed your own, conscious self. Now, there are a couple of terms in this body that I want to discuss with you. They're not very common vocabulary. I will briefly touch on them. One of them is the Panch Shabad. It appears in the very beginning, and the other one is Kala that appears in the second line. So quickly, what is Panch Shabad? There's a belief that in all melodious music or sounds are produced through 5 major sources, and they are tat, string instruments, vrit, sound that is produced through instruments that use skin, like the percussion instruments. Tabla is one of them. Ghan, dat, basically those instruments that use metal uh, to create sound by the sound of impact, And then there's nad, like one of the major instruments is pitcher, which is used in the Carnatic, South Indian, classical music. It's not very common in the Hindustani style. And then sukhir, wind instruments that use wind to produce sound. So by Panch Shabad, whenever it appears in Gurbani, this is what it means, basically that all kinds of melodious musics, sounds play. That's the idea that's been covered here. So the second word that I was about to discuss was kala. What is kala? It literally means, it appears in the second line, kala jit kartariya, in whom the divine has placed own, conscious self. So what is that kala? It literally means art, but in traditional, sense, it means a host of things like power, skill, qualities, mental faculties, play, and support as well. So in Hindu tradition, it refers to two main things. One is the 16 different kinds of qualities a person can, acquire. And those qualities are basically associated with the, waxing and waning of the moon. Every state of moon is associated with one quality, human quality. And it's when a person who is really, really skilled, that person is called, Sola Kala Sampuran, something like that. You might have heard of. So there's another term used for that is there are like 64 soft skills associated with it. So all of them, together are referred to when we use word kala. So collectively, they connote the human genius, which is essentially the origin of the humans, which is the divine itself. So once a person reaches that state, sometimes people say कि बंदा, 16 kala sampurna hai, that idea. So that's where this idea of kala is coming from. So so essentially the line is saying that, as a result of connecting with Naam, an individual is ecstatic with all possible, melodies playing Panchasabat in their being, suggesting that the person is elevated to an exalted, higher state of existence. And by virtue of Naam, coming to reside within a person, the mental state of a person is elevated and that person experiences joy. Such a person acquires the most sought after qualities and becomes, divine. Next, Panchadut Tudvas Kite, Kal Kanta Kumarya. Panchadut Tudvas Kite. You bring under control, Vas Kite. You control what? Panchadut, the five human tendencies that sometimes push an individual towards negativity. Kal Kantak Marya. You have helped control those Panchadut and you have helped remove the Kantak. Kantak is the thorn of what? Kal, time or death. So the person essentially overcomes the human limitations in the process of becoming, divine light when one connects with the Sabbath. Tori karam paya tud jin kau se naam har ke lage. Tori karam paya tud jin kau. But only those individuals upon whom you confer karam, grace. Se naam har ke lage. Only those individuals. Say, naam har ke. Hari's naam. Lage, attached. They are engaged with the naam of Hari. Only those individuals whom you bestow, you confer your grace on. Karam. Kaha Nanak tah sukh hua tit kar anhat baji. Nanak says, Kaha Nanak tah, in that house or body, sukh hua, happiness arises, and titkar anavaje, in only that house, on only that body, that unstruck sound resounds, on whom you have your grace and who has connected with the Guru's Sabbath and enshrined Naam within. That person becomes blissful. So we have already covered Anahat Shabad, so we'll skip that. So what is the lesson that we learn in 45? So the message in this body is that, individuals who engage with Naam, who are connected with the divine, essentially overcome their, human limitations, and they essentially become, divine light. They achieve their full potential, which is divinity in themselves, and they are in the permanent state of bliss. They have actually achieved that bliss, which is not a pretense, but their natural state of being. All right. Next, we go to Pauri 6. The message of Pauri 6 is pretty straightforward. It says that without connecting with the divine, there is no other option for a being. And here, the being is referred to as Nimani, one who does not have a pride, a poor being, an unfortunate being. So there's a change in tone here. And it's beautifully presented that anyone who's looking for any other option, know that that person is unfortunate. Because actually, there is no other option for an individual, for a human being, other than connecting with Naam. Sachi live Bin deh nimani, sachi live, the true eternal connection. Word live means certain deep connection rooted in, awareness and remembrance, which is like constant and unbreakable. Sachi, true, that word which is qualifying liver, that's telling you it's a very different connection. It's not a regular connection which is on and off. It is a connection that's constant. Once you have that, it does not break. But if you do not have that connection, Sachi liver bin, without that constant, eternal, true, real connection, dehinimani. The body is without pride. The body is unfortunate. That is, it has no support, nothing to rely upon, with no inherent capital to live of its own. Dehnimani, then there's an emphasis, repetition. Dehnimani live bajo. That body, unfortunate body, is poor, is unfortunate, live bajo, without that connection, devoid of that connection. Kya kare vichariya? And if that connection is not there, what can that vichari, poor being, really do? There's nothing you can do. The only empowering thing is your connection with the Omkar, the line is saying. So the Baj means without line. So the Baj, without you, Samrath koi nahi. There is no one Samrath. Koi nahi, no one is Samrath, capable. Kripa kar, extend your grace. Give your grace, bestow your grace. Kar, Kirpa, grace. Banvaria, O caretaker, the one who, Banvaria comes from Banwali, the one who takes care of the forest. The idea is of the creation. One who, but it's interpreted as the one who wears the, garland of forest flowers or the entire creation around, the neck. Where Banvaria comes from. So, O caretaker, extend your grace, because without you, so the Baal Samrat koi nahi. There is no one else who is capable of doing all the things. It's only you and your constant live connection that is capable of saving an individual. Esno hor thao nahi. To this poor being, there is no other option available. Hor thao nahi. There is no other place available for refuge for this poor being, this unfortunate being. Sabad lag savariya. Develop it, please. There is a supplication, there is a pleading tone to this. Please, sabad lag warrior, develop it through this sabad. By attaching this unfortunate being to the sabad, develop it. You know what savarna, I often talk about this word, in context of it has a very intimate touch to it. When mothers comb hair of their kids, it's called savarna. So just imagine the how a mother combs the hair and takes care, the feeling of nurturing, the love included in that, involved in that action or that thing. That's the idea that's coming in this line, that through the sabad, take care of that poor being, nurture that poor being, by attaching that being to the sabad. Sabad lags wari, you know nurture it, nurture that being, develop that being in a very motherly, very close and intimate way. That's how you develop that poor being who's disconnected, whose only option is to stay in connection with the divine. And Nanak live bajo. Nanak says, without that true connection, kya kare vichari? What else can that poor being do? It's a rhetorical question again. And the reply is nothing. That individual cannot do anything if there is no connection. So that connection, that loving relationship is very essential for experiencing that bliss. All right. So with that, we finish our last body that we were going to discuss today. And what did we learn from this body? The point is that the being is not the one who is not in constant awareness of the divine. If the being is not in a loving connection with Vahaguru, then it is basically lost. An individual without awareness is, directionless. Without harmony with the ultimate reality, a person just wavers from here and there. A person basically becomes a person needs some sort of something to rely on. So if there's no external force that or internal force on whom the individual can rely, then the person will become self-centered, short-sighted. Other than that person will not have anything else other than chasing wealth and ego. There is no real motivation or higher goal of life for such an individual. Only whims and fancies of that individual guide that person from here and there. But when the individual submits to the guru wisdom, that is the sabad, that is when it provides the individual a grounding, a purpose for life, and a direction for life. Every breath, every movement of that person is then guided towards a purpose. So it's only the guru, when that guru wisdom enters a person's life, that is when the person actually acquires true sense of purpose and direction in life. So that is what the sixth body is telling us. With that, we'll finish today's session. Now we'll move on to the questions, if there are any.
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. So the first one comes from Sukhjot Kaur in Toronto. She asks, could you talk about the difference between desire and longing for Guru Sahib, how they differ? And then she clarifies, I guess what I'm asking is, how do we differentiate between desires we are trying to give up versus our desire/longing for connection with Guru Sahib?
So instead of differentiating technically the verbiage, because we sometimes get stuck with it, the simple way of looking at it is, what is our true love? Sometimes, most of the times actually, our true love is our desires, not necessarily we know our betterment is in connection with the guru, but we usually that love is very superficial. We know that's good, but that's not enjoyable at our current state of mind. So we try to connect with the guru superficially, but it's not longing. It's not even desire or longing. It's simply a wishful thinking. But in reality, both our desire and longing is for the material world. We look for temporary, happinesses. We look for, that short moment of, happiness, that fun, that kick. But essentially, the point is that our love and our longing is both for the material world. So there's no point differentiating between, running after the verbiage. It's that it's our first love. When we are truly in love of the Guru or Guru Shabad, that is what we call Sahaj in Gurbani. And when that appears, you will automatically start seeing, signs of that. You'll notice that as Gurbani tells us, most of the things around us will not seem that appealing or that enticing to us anymore. Our perspective about things will change. Before buying, we'll think 10 times before buying anything. Do I really need this? What am I going to get out of this? So your perspective changes entirely. So let's not get stuck with the verbiage here. The point is, whether it's longing or desire, it's actually for our other love. But when that shifts to our guru, our perspective changes automatically. We start seeing that when that actually happens. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah. I've also another question is specific to Pauri 3. Divine is the provider of all. If we say that the divine resides in all beings, how can we say that the divine is the provider of all? Doesn't that allude to us saying that the divine is a magician in the sky that can wave a magic wand and provide for all? This comes from Bavraj Singh.
Well, that's what Gurbani tells us, that divine is the provider of all, because there is no one else other than the divine. So because the problem is, this issue arises when we start, looking at things from a otherness, the perspective of otherness, when we have this idea of duality in our mind, that there is one divine and then there's us. When we create that difference, there's a perspective of duality. But when Gurbani says that divine is the provider of all, the idea is that there is no exchange. Everything is divine, and there is no person sitting away who's providing everything. Because there are so many places in Gurbani which says that, you know it's the divine who himself, I know, who is the provider, and it's the divine himself who is the acceptor of those things. Basically, it's a game. Within this game, the real issue is our perspective. Are we able to see through that game and see that there is actually oneness in the entire creation? There is no giver and there is no taker. The giver and the taker are basically the same. When we reach that point, then we realize that there's no exchange in the sense we are trying to understand it. Of a magician sitting there and providing for everything. I hope that answers the question.
We also had quite a few different questions relating to the term Shabad. So what is Shabad? Is it different from Naam? And then specific questions, is Shabad in Pauri 3 and Pauri 5? Do they refer to different things? If you'd like to speak a little bit to that.
That's actually a very good question, because Sabad appears in the third and fifth Pauri, as they mentioned. And I actually wanted to discuss Sabad, but because we had covered Naam, I ended up not taking that word up. So probably I'll do a detailed discussion of Sabad in the next session, even if it doesn't appear there. But to briefly answer that question, Sabad Sabad has two meanings, one in the Indic tradition, and it has a very large meaning. Word Sabad comes from sound, and there's an idea that the entire creation has actually come from the vibration of that sound. And everything is essentially that is a creation of that Shabd. And that Shabda is essentially a manifestation of divine in the form of wisdom that we get through that sound. So that's where this idea of Sabad is coming. But within this tradition, to keep it simple, it's the word or the word of wisdom of the Guru. That's how Sabad is. But essentially, there's no difference between Naam, Sabad, from a perspective of oneness. But these terms are used to basically explain certain ideas to us. But essentially, Naam, Hukam, Sabad, they're all the same. They all refer to the divine and the different manifestations of divine, how divine is manifesting itself in the creation. But I'll definitely cover Sabad in a little bit of more detail in the next session.
Another question we got was, in a world that is always sending us distracting messages that take us off of our path to our Guru. Oh, it looks like we lost Surinder Paul. No worries. It looks like he's also back. We'll just wait a little while. Hello?
Yes, you lost me for a small moment.
No problem. We noticed. But sorry, just to reiterate, the question is, in a world that is always sending us distracting messages that take us off of our path to our Guru, what are some practical ways we can stay Guru-centric on a daily basis? This comes from Gurleen Kaur in California.
That's a tough question indeed, I would say, because the door to this thing is there's no technique to it. The only thing is, once you have developed that understanding and you have convinced yourself of the fact that, the body was saying, Sachi liva bin de nimani. That idea comes again, that please, we need to understand that we are unfortunate, we are poor without that constant connection. Whenever that realization actually happens, not theoretically, when we start to experience and feel that, that is when our love will start to, shift towards, worldly things. That distraction is there for everyone. It's only when we truly, within our heart, start to believe that my betterment or my real purpose or my real happiness will only come through connection with the divine, that's when it happens. So there is a certain level of effort involved in that, but Gurbani tells us that it comes only through grace. Probably it's like a catch-22 situation, but the only way you can actually do anything about it is do ardas and then continue to engage, you know, with Gurbani. At some point, maybe that will happen.
Yes, definitely a tough question. Another question we have is, when discussing bliss and happiness so far, have we described tributes in a heaven, or does it not exist in Sikhi?
So this is a tricky question because I wouldn't answer this in yes or no, because this idea appears in Gurbani, and the only explanation I can give you is that Gurbani doesn't really endorse or reject ideas directly. What Gurbani is after is change in attitude and behavior. Whatever idea can bring that change in perspective, attitude, and behavior, Gurbani immediately, easily uses that. So you'll notice that there's so many terms and ideas being used taken from Semitic tradition as well as Sanatan tradition, but we cannot really say that Gurbani endorses them. All we can say is that Gurbani is utilizing those ideas to make a point regarding human behavior and what's expected of it. For instance, let me give an example. I use that example quite a bit. There's a shabad, where Guru Sahib, address yogis, and they say, because, yogis, there's a practice of, they use intoxicants to reach a certain level of high in order to achieve that state of realization. So it's called tadi. And so Guru Sahib is saying that Guru Sahib addresses them and says, Baba, man matvaro, Naam Raspiya. I have, what, I'm drunk on that Naam, and, my mind has gone crazy because of that. What you usually see is when a person like me goes to another person who's, for instance, takes alcohol, a person like me would typically say, what, we are religious people, we don't drink, we shouldn't be drinking, all those things, which are nice to say, but essentially they are judgmental in nature. But look at how Guru Sahib uses that Shabad, look at Guru Sahib's attitude. Guru Sahib is saying, what, oh folks, what, my mind has gone crazy. Let me show you what I'm drunk on. It is something, which lasts forever, and it's easy to make. I'll show you the ingredients, and I'll show you how to make it. And the entire Shabad is about that. So look how, instead of, rejecting other people's ideas, Guru recognizes their right to practice or have faith in what they have. But what Guru does is Guru redefines that idea for us to basically change our attitude and behavior. And same thing, I believe, is happening with these terms that are coming from other places like heaven and hell. So Guru Sahib isn't necessarily endorsing that idea, but Guru Sahib is saying that happiness or bliss is not necessarily for something hereafter, but that's something that you can experience it right now, right here, by enshrining Guru's wisdom, which is in Sabbath, in your heart.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we're just going to take one last question, and then we'll wrap it up, just being mindful of time. It is, if the desire or hunger is gone, how can one, for example, search for the cure for coronavirus or want to be a prime minister, among other examples? I know it's an expensive question.
Well, that's what the aim is. Because if there is a desire to become prime minister, obviously you want to stay healthy, so that's not a good example to quote. But if there is a desire, because hope and despair, they're connected. When there is hope, there will be despair. Gurbani instructs us to basically get over hopes and expectations. Only when you do that, only then you can actually, truly experience bliss. Because if there is hope, you will always be, you know, sort of, you will be, disappointed if you don't get that thing. So you will have to get over these expectations and, hunger for things. Only then you can actually, experience. When you have broken away from those other loves, only then you can develop one love, which is the ultimate source of love, happiness.
Lovely. So with that, we'll be concluding our webinar today. So Inderpal, do you have any closing statements, anything you'd like to add before I start wrapping it up?
All I can say is thank you for, taking time out and, attending this session. I'll see you next week again.
Definitely. So I'd like to thank everyone for all of your questions, and apologies to those questions that were not addressed due to time constraints. Please note that a recording of this live class will be available within 24 hours. Please tune in next week for the third class in this live course series. As a reminder, we are also hosting bi-weekly live webinars. Our next webinar is on May 17th, so this Sunday, Getting to Know Vaheguru with Jasmine Kaur. We have designed this workshop specifically for children aged 6 to 10. However, even if your child is not in this age range, they are welcome to register. Children will walk through a Shabad by Bhagat Kabir Ji. The workshop will prompt lots of questions to help children pick up new vocabulary, develop thinking skills, and leave them with a desire to learn more through questioning and self-discovery. And lastly, don't forget to tune into the Sikhcast, a podcast produced by Sikhri, where we explore the various issues and events affecting Sikhs worldwide. Thank you for joining today. Today's live class will be ending now. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.